in a room full of men where men can speak from gut and intuition, women's decisions are always second guessed. I decided that, I would always have enough facts, or I will have enough insights, so that if questioned, I would always be prepared in a way that, my insights would always be backed by data.
This week's guest on Questions I Wanted to Ask is Salone Sehgal, who's world's first female general partner of a games and interactive VC fund. Salone co-founded Lumikai Fund, which is India's first early-stage interactive media and gaming VC. Salone has speak about the preparation that female founders require to build venture-backed companies, her own stories of finding her way through the world of startup and gaming, which are heavily male-dominated industries, to now giving it back by encouraging more women founders through her fund, Lumikai.
Salone, welcome to Questions I Wanted to Ask. Thank you so much for coming and, agreeing to have a conversation with me. You're one of the few women investment professionals that I'm actually talking to. So I'm really excited about this conversation.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure, really, to be here.
Before I start talking about what you have been doing and all of that, I'd like to actually, because a lot of people don't know many women from the world of finance and investing, could you just take us through of what you have been doing all these years between the different jobs that you have been at, businesses that you have built, and now investing and changing cities and stuff like that? Could you just take us through what has been happening in your life all these years?
Sure. So, hi, everyone. I'm Salone Sehgal. I'm currently the co-founder and general partner of Lumikai Fund. We're India's first early-stage interactive media and gaming venture capital fund, and we're anchored by some of the world's largest games and media conglomerates. I have 15 years of experience as a global games and new media investor. I've been a former games entrepreneur and an M&A banker. Prior to this, I used to be a principal at a fund called London Venture Partners, which was a Europe-based seed stage gaming venture capital fund. It had a track record of backing over 40 companies, which ended up delivering over $14 billion in shareholder value. I was also the co-founder and CEO of Truly Social, which was a venture-backed gaming company, which was building immersive social worlds for female audiences, which leveraged celebrities, influencers, and brands. And prior to that, I was an investment banker and came from private equity. I used to be the vice president of Barclays Global CEO office. I used to be working as an investment banker with Morgan Stanley. I had over $10 billion of M&A transaction experience. I've lived in I've lived across three major continents. I've moved, I like to say, I think over the last 15 years, I have either moved cities, flats, homes, or countries every 2 years.
Wow. And this is all work-based because of work?
Yeah. So I've had the fortunate distinction of having lived across multiple cities in Europe, and now obviously I'm in India, but I've lived in Denmark. I've had the fortune of living in Spain and Barcelona. I did my education and MBA in Barcelona. I've lived in London. I've worked in Switzerland and private equity. And I'm from Delhi, and I currently now live in Mumbai. So, yeah.
Wow. Normally women get really scared when they have to change cities, right? Especially women who are career women who are working full time, especially in jobs, right? Of course, now COVID has changed a lot with how we are working with this entire remote thing and all of that. But and I actually, happen to speak to a lot of women. Somebody has gotten married and wants to change cities and is worried that, but I was working here in this. And then, how will I go to another city and change a job? And what is your opinion? Because we've obviously, lived in so many cities. What is your opinion of this changing cities and changing countries and continents? And do you think it brings actually breaks, or you think it brings more opportunities? And how do you look at it actually?
Yeah, I think, look, it's very circumstantial. I think at each point of time in my career, a change in city or location or geography or career always propelled me forward. So it was always a change for the better. But I can understand the hesitation and apprehension, especially for women who have families, who have dependents, who have children, or who have larger family setups, or spouses who may or may not be supportive, or who just don't have that flexibility, or even sometimes that freedom. So I can understand that it's not such an easy decision for them, right? I left home when I was 18, and I had the opportunity to go to business school when I was very young. I was 23. I was the youngest when I in my business school MBA class, and those circumstances were very different. My risk taking appetite was very different. I was able to embark and I guess take opportunities, and my risk take, not just risk taking, but novelty seeking was also a little bit more different. And my family background allowed me. My family was very supportive in being able to explore new avenues. There was never any pressure in terms of the kind of pressure that women face about getting married or having to settle down. There was never any opportunity. My parents were very clear about go out, build your career, pursue, you want to build a venture of your own, go out and build a career of your own. You want to build a gaming company, go out and do it. So all of those avenues were very open to me. But I, especially coming from India, and it's a patriarchal society, I know those are not avenues open to everybody, and that's not an option available to everybody. So those are very difficult questions. And my only, I guess, advice that I tell young women is to be bold and to make those choices, and to take those calculated risks within the boundaries of what is possible, because sometimes it's not possible given the circumstances and the situations and the familial setups, right? And I think one needs to be cognizant of that as well. And there have been multiple examples of women just breaking out of those setups, and kudos to that. But I think one needs to find that fine balance. But in my case, I've been very fortunate that each jump has always propelled me forward.
Tell me, Salone, you spoke about risk taking, and especially with women. I honestly feel that women are still not very pro taking risks, right? Especially in their careers, because career as such as a concept is something which is in the last 20, 30 years that has started coming to our generation, right? And when you take those risks, I think a lot of us take those risks because you have the background or the backing, right? What is that backing? Is it just you, or is it family, or is it something else?
That's a great question. I'll give you an example of my life where I grew up. So I used to play games as a kid, but when I grew up, there was nobody like me playing games. I never saw anybody like me in a game world. And then fast forward many years, when I was starting to build a gaming company, I never saw anybody like me building a gaming company. So when I would walk into a room raising funding, there were many times when investors would open the door and they were like, "Oh, we didn't expect to see a woman entrepreneur." Or when I was, even when I became an investor and was in a VC, I never saw women like me on this side of the table. And very quickly, I began to realize that if I really wanted to see a game with a brown female protagonist in a game world, the chances are I'd probably have to build it myself. And then later on, I realized I'd probably have to finance it myself as well. Right. And that's the irony of it. But I think what the awareness that it did imbibe in me is that the world around us tells us what you should do and what you can do. And I think in my case, what it did imbibe in me was a certain contrarian way of thinking. Because even when I was in investment banking or in private equity, there were a lot of shoulds and coulds that I was imbibed. I used to be told, that, oh, you should wear high heels to work because I'm not very tall. I'm just about 5'2", 5'3". But I was told that, oh, you should wear high heels to work. People will take you seriously. Or yeah,
Wow.
and this was in Europe. Or I was told by a female managing director at work that, and I asked, and there was this meeting where they were encouraging female leadership. And I asked one of the sole female managing directors at work, is that how do you maintain a work-life balance? And she said, well, honey, you need to get yourself a stay-at-home husband. And I laughed and I told her, I said, well, where do you get one of those? And she said, no, I'm serious. And that's not to be said. My husband is an entrepreneur, and he's a fantastic. He runs a fantastic business, and that's clearly really rubbish advice to give somebody. But I'm just trying to tell you is that you as a woman, you are given these narratives of what you should do and what you can do, and all my life you have been told, and as women we are told what we can do,
and we start believing in that.
Yeah. And I think in that way, what it has allowed me to do is to develop a contrarian way of thinking, because once you drop the expectations of what society expects of you, it kind of unshackles you to actually be what you really can be, and what you allow, and then you allow yourself to be what you really, that what your true potential is. And I think that's what you should be. Like, when I never thought when I was graduating from university that I would be setting up a venture capital fund focused on gaming and interactive media about 15, 16 years hence. And well, here I am. So
interesting.
So that's been my journey.
That's fantastic. And somewhere all these experiences, has that been your motivation to actually, when you set up Lumikai Fund, has that been your motivation that you also push a lot of women? Because I know that you are purposely taking on that, you're championing the purpose of bringing more women to forefront, whether it's the women entrepreneurs or women in gaming, and the support staff, or whatever you want to call it, right? More women. Is that your motivation, or what is that higher purpose that you're actually moving to?
100%. I think that's definitely a very intrinsic driver of promoting more diversity and more inclusivity. A genesis of that I guess a kernel of that started with my own venture, which was around building games and gaming experiences and immersive gaming experiences for female audiences. The genesis of my company started with that, because 60% of the world's mobile gamers are women, but less than 20% of gaming experiences are built for women. And then when you start looking at the composition of game makers, you realize that 99% of them are men. So when your game makers and game developers don't look like the audiences who are consuming their products, and how experiences will never be built for them. And we see this all around us, in terms of the tech and the products. The audiences that consume products look nothing like the developers and the programmers who are building products for them, right? Yeah. And this is the same when we look at, let's say, the world of finance and investments as well. You look around and you see these VC funds which are full of men, and who are backing companies who are also, who are also backing products and companies which are non-diverse. And so a very key part of this thesis of Lumikai was to build and finance diverse teams and diverse products, and to back diverse founders, and also to promote diverse talent in the ecosystem. And a very key part of that initiative with Lumikai was, an initiative that we launched with Lumikai Pathbreakers, was to encourage more diverse talent and to encourage more diverse, at least women from all walks of life in the gaming and interactive media landscape, to come up and own their space and to take on that mantle and that pedestal, and to be recognized for their contribution to the landscape. And we've done now 2 editions of it, and it's also to motivate them to think about entrepreneurship. We've now seen 800 we've spoken to now 800 founders in the gaming ecosystem. A very small sliver of them have been female founders, and that's been deeply disappointing for me. So, personally, that's been a personal motivation, is I want to encourage more women to take on more entrepreneurship, particularly in this space, because when you have game makers who look like the audiences, you will see more immersive in quality experiences. And we're already seeing this in OTT, right? We're already seeing this in cinema. We're already seeing this in short form television, where you've got a lot more representation, you've got a lot more female protagonists, you've got a lot more women-centric storylines. And I hope to see that in
it took a woman to change the entire landscape of Indian television.
Exactly, right? And so I'm hoping that can be catalyzed by the initiatives that we're doing. I mean, we're not we're hoping that these are very, very small steps, and hopefully they're in the right direction. And we hope to be backing female founders. We strongly encourage our teams to hire more diverse talents, to build more diverse teams, because we know how important diversity is. Our own internal investment team is diverse, and that diversity of view and perspective is very important for us, even when we make investment decisions. And it's a very key driver of who we are as a fund.
Fantastic. So Salone, tell me, you're talking about more representation, but I had a conversation with a male VC once, and he had tweeted saying, "Oh, we are doing so and so to bring more diversity and equality and stuff like that." And I only had one question. I said the kind of training men receive to become entrepreneurs, right, is very different from the kind of training or upbringing women receive. What are you as a fund doing? I mean, do you think that there are changes that needs to be done to be able to bring more women? Because if there are 100 applications called for, say, for you guys to invest in entrepreneurs, you'll only get 4 or 5 women applications, right? Which means that there are less and less women who are either confident to be able to go and ask for funding or seek funding, and also actually know about this world. And it's pretty much been my experience too, right? When I started working on gaming, I mean, it's pretty much a male-dominated industry. And of course, with experience, you kind of travel the way. But what do you think are steps required from a training and development perspective for upcoming entrepreneurs, for existing female entrepreneurs, etc., to be able to actually even reach that stage?
Yeah, there's a really good question. There are fundamental problems that aren't necessarily solved just by training.
Yeah.
So, it's not just about training. It's not just about mentorship. The first, I've written a blog a very long time back. I wrote a blog post about this, that there's a lot of data that's put up about how there isn't enough funding which is going towards female founders, or less than 2% of investment dollars goes towards female founders, etc., etc. But the first and foremost is about what is the chain essentially that kicks off female entrepreneurship, right? So first, when female founders set up building businesses, now typically when male founders set up businesses, they usually have a very ready network to set up businesses
exactly.
with. They have, they'll pull in friends from their places that they've worked with, and they've got very ready networks, and it's my buddy from this place and that place, and they've
exactly
together. Women, as they grow older through their work careers, they tend to have weaker networks because they have caregiving responsibilities. So as a woman moves into, let's say, her mid-30s, she's probably had children, she has caregiving responsibilities. She's no longer doing networking, but she's got more child rearing, family rearing responsibility.
Yeah.
As a result of which, she's not spending time on thinking about her career, which makes the professional networks weaker. So once her child-rearing responsibilities are over, when she comes back into the workforce thinking about now I want to take on my entrepreneurial journey, she actually has weaker networks to start thinking about her entrepreneurial journey. So often it means setting off as a solo founder. Solo founders, typically, even men, not just women, but even men, find it very difficult to raise venture capital.
Capital, yes.
And solo founders, even when they raise the first round of capital, they find it very difficult to raise a subsequent round of capital after that. Often they are they're like almost 70% less likely to raise the next round of capital. So that's the first major constraint, is that their networking opportunities are very, very limited, right?
Yes.
Because of the patriarchal setup of the fact that they have very little networking opportunities available to them. So
I guess the comfort, right? Comfort of reaching out. Women, I mean, and I'm saying this out of personal experience, out of hosting this podcast, that it's very easy to reach out to a woman as compared to reaching out to a man. Of course, I'm in the space of sales and business development, so it comes naturally to me. But I sometimes wonder that what happens to so many women who don't find it comfortable, and men equally find it uncomfortable when women reach out to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the second question is the imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Women face, right? And that is obviously inculcated very deeply, much more in women than it is in men. Most women are very hesitant, asking for assistance, asking for help, asking for guidance, or just that feeling of I belong in this space, I deserve to be here, I am truly going to, I deserve for this opportunity. And there is a statistic where Harvard Business School actually did the stat that men apply for a job when they are 60%, when they're almost 60% qualified for the job. Women apply for the job when they are 90% qualified for the job. This even with when we did Lumikai Pathbreakers, right? When we wrote to these amazing, incredible women that you've been nominated for Lumikai Pathbreakers, we'd love to feature you. We'd love to have a little bit about yourself, your bio, your stories. There was incredible amount of hesitation and just resistance in sharing their stories. And it was like, are you sure you really want us? But, we haven't done that much. There was all of that. And, there were multiple back and forth. There were lots of reminders to be sent because they were so hesitant in sharing their stories and so hesitant about being featured on a public forum. So there is a lot of that as well. And it's not just about women supporting each other, but it's also about men championing other women, right? And that's incredibly important. And this is why for us, Lumikai Pathbreakers was just a step in the right direction because, it is said, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And that is incredibly important. So when I see, VCs doing these panels and podcasts and they don't have female representation and they don't have female voices and they don't have female founders speaking, it sends the message that there isn't enough representation or there isn't enough role models out there for other women to look up to. And that, I think that's a barrier that needs to be broken because if a woman can see at least two other women on the panel, they can see a sense of belongingness and they can feel like, well, if she can be there, then I can be there as well.
Yeah, and I think I've also seen this that the more women, and I mean, of course, I've been very fortunate that I've had men who've supported or championed what I've been doing. But I've realized that every time I have brought forth a woman, right, it's been such an incredible story because that women would have never realized that okay, I belong here or this is what I deserve. And these are women I'm talking about who are at leadership positions at some of the biggest media firms I'm talking about, and it's incredible how just women supporting women can bring so much of change.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But Saloni, I just want to go back to the gaming. I'm not talking much about what the fund is doing, because of course you talk about it through in other media. But I think it's a lot to do with your own personal journey, right? You've been in the startup world. You launched your own business a couple of years back. You've been in gaming. In fact, even in investments, these are pretty male dominated industries, right? While at certain initial level you can continue doing, but there is what we call of glass ceiling. Yes, a lot of people say it doesn't exist, but I mean, we truly know it exists, right? How do you start? What are the smaller measures? I mean, I know you can talk about 100 things that women can do or men can do, but at personal level, what are the things you personally feel are important for women to, when they reach that mid career stage, that they need to do to be able to reach that leadership level?
Yeah,
that they don't get engrossed in politics, that they don't get weakened up by having lack of networking or whatever. I don't know, what are those 5-7 key pointers to be able to keep in mind when you're especially in a male dominated industries, or in an organization where the leadership is all taken over by men?
Yeah. So, I think that's an incredibly, that's just such an incredibly important question. It's something I really struggled through, because all my life I had very non-traditional career paths, and I didn't have any like female role models or any female mentors, so to speak. So, I was kind of navigating blind. So, and because I didn't see anybody who looked like me, I didn't know what that career path could or should look like. So it kind of was just on my shoulders of what I wanted to. It was, in one way, it was a blank canvas of what I wanted or what I thought it could be. But on another hand, it was also terribly terrifying, because at many times, you're walking through a dark room, and there is sometimes you don't know where to switch the light on, because you don't know where this ends up, right? So the only way that I think I could leverage, I guess I guess that's a particular personality type that I have, is that I went inwards and I said, well, how do I then become the best version of myself? So the only way to do it, so I'm incredibly logical. I like preparation. So how do and I like to be prepared. So the only way that I realized to stand out in a crowd was to be prepared. So while I realized that in a room full of men, where men can speak from gut and intuition, women's decisions are always second guessed, I decided that I would always have enough facts, or I will have enough insights, so that if questioned, I would always be prepared in a way that my insights would always be backed by data. And it's exhausting to be able to do that, because I would often be in rooms where there would be men who would say, well, we just don't think like this will be. And when you would ask them, their response would often be, well, we just don't feel like it. Whereas as a woman giving a decision, you're always second guessed about it. And I learned that the way to counter that would be to arm myself with fact and information. So that was the one thing that I learned how to do. The second thing that I learned how to do was to drop qualifiers like, sorry, just, these words that women use. I learned how to drop that. Or I learned how to drop filler words like, that a lot of women use. It makes you sound underconfident in meetings. And it also makes you sound unsure of yourself. I learned how to drop that. It just it makes you again. It's about how you learn to communicate, especially if you're in a male-dominated environment. You sort of start to learn how to communicate, to put your point across. So I learned how to do that. So these are very small things that I get across, again, to get my point across in a male-dominated environment. And of course, you have to fine-tune it when you're in different environments, right? Another thing that I learned was you need to keep a fine balance between active listening and taking a stand versus being too pushy, because I've also seen women become very very direct, and they go to the extreme point of view where they're coming across rather forceful, but you don't want to lose your inherent femininity to some extent. So you want to be able to get the point across, but you don't want to be too forceful. So you want to keep that fine balance as well. And so there is I guess a person fine balance to be maintained where there's active listening, but you also don't want to be interrupted enough. So there's a very calm way of saying, well, I haven't done speaking yet. If you allow me to complete my sentence. And because women get interrupted a lot in meetings, you have to learn how to manage that as well. So I think these were small tricks and I guess tricks of the trade that I picked up over the years while conducting myself in meetings or in professional setups, which allowed me, I guess, to conduct myself in meetings. But I think I'd say I was always over prepared in professional settings, which
basically, somebody else also, we had Mrs. Deena Mehta, who was the first women's chairperson of the stock exchange on the podcast. And she said that women will always have to work hard extra. And she became the chairperson, I think 20 years back. So it was much harder for her in stock market. But I guess it's the same answer that you will always, at least to what seems obvious right now, is we always have to work a little extra harder to be able to reach or to be able to maintain where you are.
So it's this fantastic quote that I heard, to be a woman, you have to act like a lady, you need to think like a man, you need to look like a young girl, and you need to work like a horse.
That's a sad truth. But, Salone, the larger question still stays for me. What bothers till today to me is that you work certain number of years, work hard, prove your talent, etc. But the moment you reach that top position, right? How do you battle out chemistries between men versus a woman in that boardroom, right? There'll be always in a boardroom of 10 people, in a board meeting or whatever you want to call it, the leadership roles of those 10 people, there'll be 8 out of them will be men who are always like brother, bhai, that thing, brother, my friend, oh, we hang out, that. And the 2 women are there will be like, okay, where do I get this brother? How do you tackle that? And how do you make an impact? What comes to your mind? A lot of times I'm like, okay, I don't know how to handle that because you're the odd one out. And there's nothing you can do to be able to beat the personal chemistry between 2 men, right? How do you create those chemistries?
Yeah, I think that is, that's definitely a challenge. I guess one is to have one is, I think, to command a certain amount of gravitas and personal respect is, where you have a certain amount of, either subject matter expertise, a certain amount of, I guess it goes back to what Ms. Deena Mehta said, is that you have a certain amount of gravitas where, people respect you for what you bring to the table.
Yeah.
And hence you have a certain reason for why you belong in that room. But yes, you're right. In a certain aspect, it is, you can't have that chemistry, and that's okay. I think that you accept the fact that you won't have that certain chemistry, to accept that you won't have that,
and stop running after it. Actually,
you won't have that banter. You're not going to be, backslapping terms with the bros, and but now, as we see a lot more women in venture or in the investment rooms, and you're seeing a lot more women in in at least as female founders, and you're seeing a lot more women run podcasts or businesses like yourself, I think things will change, right? You're seeing a lot more change happen. It's
smaller changes.
Smaller changes, but it will happen, so that these are small things. But I think it's somewhere to accept the fact that yes, maybe that is not you stop chasing it after a point of time.
Yes.
Where you just fully accept that that banter, that that chemistry, that cigar backslapping, whiskey drinking culture is perhaps not the one that you may want to embrace, and not something that that's you anyways. So
I mean, I kind of took it the hard way. I understood it the hard way, but I guess most of us learn it the hard route. When you go through it yourself and you're not able to crack that chemistry, whereas you're fantastic at what you do, or stuff like that. And those were the moments I actually always felt that one day, if I could, I will get other women to talk about it. I will share maybe my own stories. And of course, we all have those stories to this thing. Coming back to the woman entrepreneur part, Salone, I always feel that obviously the way women entrepreneurs, women founders market themselves is way, way, way. I mean, there's a lot of room for improvement, right? As an investment, as somebody who's sitting on the investment table and writing checks for founders, right? What is your advice, especially for female founders, to be able to market? Because of course, especially in this world, what you see, what you visible is considered to be sometimes or a lot of times successful, right? What is your advice for female founders to be able to market? What are the things that are a must do, and what are the things that it's okay if you're not comfortable?
Yeah, I think the couple of I guess my first advice for founders and particularly female founders is build a team. Most female founders embark on their entrepreneurial journeys often solo, and there's nothing wrong with being a solo founder. If you are a second time founder, you've built a successful business before, and you know exactly what you're doing. But if you're a first time founder, not only is it difficult for you to raise capital, but also it is just an incredibly hard endeavor for you as an individual to do everything, because no one individual has all the qualities. You may be strong in business, or you may be strong in technical, but you'll find growth or marketing or just building
some
product.
Or the other. Yeah.
Some or the other will be missing in you. So it's very important for you to have a founder who complements your skill set. So find yourself a co-founder. The likelihood of you being able to raise capital, if you want to raise capital, will be that much easier. So once you have a co-founder in place, I think the next determination is to determine, do you want to build a business that will sustain your lifestyle, or do you want to build a business that you wish to raise venture capital for? Because both are diametrically opposite to each other. So if you want to build a business that is going to sustain a lifestyle, that is perfectly fine. And sometimes I feel that there are founders who actually want to do that, but because there is so much noise around raising capital, and this company raising $10 million and this company raising $50 million and this exit and that exit, founders get confused, and they actually take these businesses, which are not inherently venture capital businesses, to VCs. They get rejected and they get very dejected and demotivated. But that was never a VC business in the first place. So I think it's the next step is to identify what kind of business are you trying to build? Because if you are a VC backed business, it's a whole different trajectory. It's a whole different treadmill. It's a whole different career path in itself, because then you're playing this whole valuation game, then you're building for scale, and then you go down this rabbit hole of how big is the market, what is the use case, what is the product that you're building, what are the metrics of your product, if you're pre-MVP, what is the problem that you're solving, and then you have those questions that you have to ask. Now, once you have identified I found myself a co-founder, I want to build a venture-backed business, then the next question is, are we going to go to the market with a small product, or are we going to be pre-MVP and we have to have a presentation around it? Now, if you're going to have a presentation or a pre-MVP product, then find a business, or especially if you're a first-time founder, align your business or your chosen business as closely to the background or experience that you have. Like, what is your founder market fit? Like, how are you as a founder uniquely positioned to solve the problem that you have identified? If you are a founder from the creative businesses, but then you're looking and saying, I want to build electric batteries, but you have no technical knowledge of it and you don't have any experience, or you have no ability to build a team, you're very unlikely to raise money for it, right? But if you are a creative founder with strong technical experience, ability to find talent, and you've worked for Zynga, you understand game design, and you're building a gaming business for, let's say, female audiences before, that's great founder market fit. The likelihood of you being able to go to a business and a VC and being able to build a team around it is very high, right? So VCs at this point of time, when you're pre-MVP, want to see founder market fit, right? So identify a business where you have founder market fit. Then the next step is to identify a vision. So, and this is whether you're a male or a female VC, because these are all founder. These are all applicable, whether you're a woman or a man.
Gender agnostic, yeah.
Gender agnostic. The vision is where I think women tend to undersell themselves. A woman can do all of these, right? But then when it comes to the vision, the woman will kind of not sell the vision in terms of the, there's the understating and the underselling of the vision. That goes back to imposter syndrome. So then you have to identify the imposter syndrome in saying, well, why do I feel that I'm not capable enough? And this is why you need to go through these motions of finding yourself a good founder, really understanding the business that you're building. If you have found the market fit, and when you've kind of crossed all these kind of benchmarks, then you'll be able to, really be able to come up with a coherent vision and be able to present that vision really well. And that's when you come to the pre-MVP presentation stage. And then, if you have a small prototype, if an early prototype, that's fantastic. That always works. We as a fund, we play every product, every game, every app that comes our way. A lot, maybe other VCs don't, I can't say, but as a fund, we always try out a product and a prototype before we invest. So we're very hands-on. So if this is an approach that, as other founders are taking, we're very happy to talk to founders this way. But for most women, I would say, really think about that vision that you want to sell. And a part of that vision also means looking at the competitive landscape, means looking at what is out there in the world. What is the competitive landscape looks like? What are peers building? What are we building that is going to set us apart? What is our special sauce? And hence, why does our vision make sense? And then you kind of go back to that. And that's kind of my advice to founders.
Interesting. That was like, I was like, okay, I'm going to slowly absorb that. I was hoping that, you kind of lay out the process, because it's from the outside, especially for people like us who are from the creative businesses and, more service-based businesses, this process itself sounds so technical that a lot of, especially, women tend to get, take a step back and say, okay, this is not for me. So thank you for kind of, detailing this out. We've spoken so much about these women entrepreneurs and things they need to do, but I want to just go back to, and this is like the last part of the conversation, Salone. I want to go back to your life. You are meeting so many people, over the, I think ever since you've set up the fund, you would have met some 1,000 entrepreneurs, founders, etc. There's so much time involved. There's so much of number crunching, data crunching involved, all of that. How does in all of this, especially in a business like finance and investing, which is so time consuming, where does your personal life come? What are your own personal mantras of, bringing that sanity? I won't say balance, because I think balance is a very, overrated word, right? But bringing sanity in your own life, what are the things that you follow to ensure, things are taken care of at home, in your personal relationships, etc.? How do you manage your life at that front?
Yeah, it's a constant, I guess, struggle, and it's a constant challenge, I guess. I don't think there's a magic wand. I wish there was. I think, since my time as an entrepreneur, what I've personally struggled with is, that disconnect. Is that how do you learn to turn your mind? How do you switch your mind off?
Yes.
And especially after you've had your day of work, and especially when you're running your own thing, your own business or your own fund, or whatever it is, whatever it may be.
But you're the boss.
Yeah, how do you kind of switch your mind off? And I find that was always a struggle for me. So I, as an entrepreneur, what I started embracing was, I started to cook. I think cooking was an activity that I started to embrace, that, when you're in the kitchen, because cooking is an activity which requires you to be very present. You can't be thinking of something else and chopping, because you're likely to chop your finger off. So, that activity of just embracing and being cooking, and then it eventually leads you to a certain outcome, whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. But that was an activity which would automatically cut me out of, the day, and it would allow me to just be in the moment, and allow me to, just be, allow me to embrace the activity that I was doing at hand. And that's one of the mechanisms I have to be able to keep some form of balance. I have a daily meditation practice, which I do keep, and try and keep on a daily basis. I have a yoga practice that I do twice a week. I work out three times a week. As far as possible, I try not to work the weekends. And as a fund, we've tried to maintain that balance for our team as well. It's not always been possible. We've just been closing the fund, etc. But we try and maintain that balance for us as a team, and at least we kind of keep those boundaries. But it is hard, and especially when you have founders, and our founders work very hard, and you want to be there for founders as well, and it's just it is a challenge. But I think the one thing the pandemic did show us is that the world needs to slow down, and we see what happens when the world does slow down. We see the world breathes a lot easier. The environment cleaned up. Things became quieter. People got clarity, and now we're back to this frenetic pace again. But yeah, I think those 18 months made us realize what the world could look like if things were a lot quieter.
I think we all started looking inwards. That's how I would kind of look at it, because look at the amount of conversations we're having around self-growth and personal growth, and which is amazing, which was never there. I mean, it surprises me, why wasn't it there? Nice to know. I think, it's beautiful that, Salone, whenever I talk to women in leadership positions, especially who are, women in business or jobs, because of course, on the podcast, we've had a lot of creative people also who actually technically are freelancers, right? Whether they're actors or directors and all of that. But most of the women who are on jobs or business, they have similar, experiences of, that, okay, you need to work extra hard to be able to prove this thing. But at the same time, I think a lot of them spoke about, including you spoke about compartmentalization, and all of them have their own tricks and, techniques to bring that compartmentalization. And the more we hear, and honestly, I actually started taking some of those tips, when I, for example, Deena ma'am's episode, when I heard of how does she compartmentalize, it's important that we keep talking about those tricks, techniques, tips, or whatever those little things that we learn on the way. So I think, all these years that I've seen you talking about this thing, I really wanted to say thank you for kind of taking all these measures to bringing women, more at the forefront in the gaming ecosystem, interactive media, and in fact going out and talking, talking about this entire, effort or championing that you're doing. Thank you so much. I am sure a lot of founders, a lot of women will kind of benefit from those efforts that you're taking. And also, I'm hoping from this conversation.
Well, thank you so much. This was one of the most fun conversations I've had. And, really, it was deeply personal. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, Salone.
If you've enjoyed this conversation, please make sure you hit the like button, comment what was your favorite part, and also subscribe to the channel. We have lots of fantastic people coming up. This podcast is available on your podcast app by the name Questions I Wanted to Ask. You can also follow me on social media for more updates, short format content. Links will be in the description.